The morning sun rose over New Haven like it had done for the past 50 years, since humans first arrived on this world. Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the UHS Defender, watching the golden light paint the clouds above the planet's largest city. 2,300,000 people lived down there, farming the rich soil and building a life among the stars. Jake had been patrolling the system for 3 years now. It was peaceful work, mostly checking on mining ships and greeting the occasional trader from other worlds. The humans of New Haven got along well with their alien neighbors. The bird-like Altarians often came to trade their beautiful crystals for human grain. And the gentle Kalani loved human music so much they had built a concert hall in the capital city. The alarm on his console made Jake jump. Long-range sensors had picked up something big coming toward their system. He called up the display and frowned at what he saw. 12 ships moving fast and in military formation. The computer identified them as Zephyrian vessels. Jake had never seen a Zephyrian ship before, but he knew about them. They were warriors from the far side of the galaxy, always fighting someone or conquering new worlds. But they had never bothered humans before. There was no reason for them to come here. He opened a channel to the planet below. Admiral Lisa Carter answered on the first ring. She was a tough woman with gray hair and sharp eyes who had fought in the border wars 20 years ago. "Admiral, we have 12 Zephyrian warships approaching the system," Jake reported. "They'll be here in 6 hours. Lisa's face went serious. "Any response to hails?" "Not yet, ma'am." "Should I try again?" "Keep trying. I'm calling a council meeting with the colony leadership. Something doesn't feel right about this." Down on the planet, Colony Director Ryan Hayes was in his office reviewing the weekly reports when Lisa's call came through. Ryan was a big man with kind eyes who had left a comfortable job on Earth to help build this new world. He loved everything about New Haven, from the purple grass that grew in the valleys to the twin moons that lit up the night sky. "Zephyrians?" Ryan asked when Lisa explained the situation. "What could they want here? We don't have anything they need." "That's what worries me," Lisa replied. "I'm moving our defense ships into position, but Jake's destroyer is all we have. If they want to fight, we can't give them one." Ryan looked out his window at the city below. Children were playing in the parks. Farmers were heading out to their fields. People were living their normal, peaceful lives, not knowing that death was racing toward them through space. "Try talking to them," Ryan said. "Maybe they're just passing through." But the Zephyrians weren't just passing through. On the lead ship, War Commander Thex Null stood before a holographic display showing the human planet. His forearms moved across the controls as he studied the cities below. The Zephyrians looked like giant insects with smooth black skin and multiple eyes. They had conquered dozens of worlds, but this was different. This was personal. "The infestation spreads," Thex Null said to his officers. "These humans multiply like parasites. They take worlds that belong to superior species. Today we begin the cleansing." His second-in-command, Vextal, shifted nervously. "Commander, the humans have done nothing to provoke us. Their colony is peaceful. They trade with other species fairly." Thex Null's main eyes focused on his subordinate with cold anger. "That is exactly why they must be eliminated. They make other species soft with their false friendship. They spread weakness through the galaxy like a disease. The hegemony has decided. All humans must die." Back on the UHS Defender, Jake kept trying to contact the approaching fleet. Finally, a response came through. The alien voice was cold and mechanical. "Human vessel, you have 30 minutes to evacuate your system. Any ship or person remaining after that time will be destroyed." Jake couldn't believe what he was hearing. "This is Captain Morrison of the UHS Defender. We are a peaceful colony. What are your intentions?" "Our intention is purification," came the reply. "Your species is a plague that must be cured. You have 29 minutes. Jake immediately called Admiral Carter. "They're giving us 30 minutes to evacuate the entire system." "That's impossible. There are over 2 million people down there." Lisa felt ice form in her stomach. She had seen enough war to know when someone meant what they said. "Jake, get your ship between them and the planet. Buy us as much time as you can." "Yes, ma'am." Lisa then called an emergency broadcast to every person on New Haven. Her voice went out over every radio, every television, every communication device on the planet. "This is Admiral Carter. We are under immediate threat from hostile forces. All civilians must evacuate to emergency shelters immediately. This is not a drill. I repeat, this is not a drill." Dr. Amanda Foster was in the middle of surgery when the announcement came through the hospital speakers. She was a small woman with steady hands who had saved thousands of lives over her career. She looked up at her patient, a young man who had been injured in a farming accident. "Keep working," she told her team. "We save who we can save." Across the city, people ran for the underground shelters that had been built when the colony was first established. Parents grabbed their children. Teachers led their students to safety, but everyone knew the truth. There wasn't enough time. There weren't enough shelters. Communications Officer Peter Grant sat at his station in the Planetary Command Center, watching the chaos unfold. He was a quiet man who loved his job because it usually meant talking to friends and family back on Earth. Now he was watching his world die. "Peter," Admiral Carter said as she rushed into the command center, "send a message to Earth, tell them what's happening." Peter's fingers flew over his keyboard. He opened every channel he could find, broadcasting on every frequency that might reach human space. "This is New Haven Colony. We are under unprovoked attack by Zephyrian forces. 12 warships approaching. They are targeting civilians. They are targeting children. Remember us." Above the planet, Jake positioned his small destroyer directly in the path of the Zephyrian fleet. The UHS Defender had been built for patrol work, not war. Its weapons were meant to stop pirates and smugglers, not military warships. But Jake and his crew of 68 men and women stayed at their posts. "This is Captain Morrison," Jake broadcast to the Zephyrian fleet. "You want to hurt innocent people, you go through us first." The response came in the form of plasma fire. The Zephyrian ships opened fire without warning, without mercy, without honor. Jake's ship lasted 43 seconds against 12 warships. There were no survivors. On the planet below, the first bombs began to fall. Colony Director Ryan Hayes stood in his office, watching the flashes of light in the sky as the Zephyrian ships destroyed everything humans had built. He could see fires starting in the distance. He could hear the screams beginning. His assistant ran into the room. "Sir, we need to get you to a shelter." Ryan shook his head. "I'm staying here. Someone needs to coordinate the evacuation efforts as long as possible." But there would be no evacuation. The Zephyrians had not come to conquer. They had come to exterminate. The slaughter had begun. 3 weeks after New Haven died, Captain Steve Parker was hauling cargo between the outer colonies when his ship's computer detected something drifting in space. The Morning Star was an old freighter that had seen better days, but her sensors still worked fine. Steve was a practical man who had been flying cargo routes for 15 years. He knew space junk when he saw it, but this was different. "Computer, what am I looking at?" Steve asked as he guided his ship closer to the object. "Emergency escape pod, human design, life support systems failing," the computer replied in its flat mechanical voice. Steve felt his heart skip. There were no human ships supposed to be in this sector. The nearest colony was New Haven, and nobody had heard from them in weeks. Their communication blackout had been blamed on solar storms, but now Steve was starting to worry. He brought the small pod into his cargo bay and ran to check on whoever was inside. The pod's window was frosted over, but he could see someone lying still inside. Steve opened the emergency release and found a young woman with brown hair, barely breathing. Her name tag read Katie Walsh, System Engineer. Steve carried her to his medical bay and started the revival process. It took 6 hours for Katie to wake up, and when she did, she started screaming. She screamed for 10 minutes straight before Steve could calm her down enough to talk. "They're all dead," Katie whispered, her voice broken and raw. "Everyone. All of them. The children, the families, everyone. Who's dead?" Steve asked, though he was starting to fear the answer. "New Haven, the whole planet. The Zephyrians came and they killed everyone. They hunted us down like animals. They burned the cities. They shot the children who tried to run." Steve felt sick. "How many survived?" Katie's eyes went empty. "Maybe 12 people got away in pods like mine. Maybe. Out of 2,300,000 people. They're all gone, Steve. They're all gone." Steve checked Katie's pod data recorder and found hours of footage from New Haven's final day. What he saw made him throw up twice. The Zephyrians hadn't just attacked military targets. They had specifically targeted schools, hospitals, and refugee centers. They had hunted down families hiding in the forests. They had shot children who were trying to surrender. Steve immediately changed course for Terra Nova, the nearest major human colony. He sent coded messages ahead, but he didn't trust regular communications anymore. If the Zephyrians were willing to murder an entire world without warning, they might be listening to human transmissions. When the Morning Star docked at Terra Nova 3 days later, Steve found himself facing a committee of military officers and government officials. Admiral Chris Thompson was there, along with representatives from 6 different human worlds. They had all come because of Steve's cryptic message about New Haven. Steve played the recordings from Katie's pod in a sealed conference room. The footage showed Zephyrian soldiers shooting a group of children who had their hands up in surrender. It showed them burning a hospital full of patients who couldn't be moved. It showed them laughing as they hunted terrified families through the streets. The room went completely silent when the footage ended. Admiral Thompson was a veteran of 3 wars, but his hands were shaking as he turned off the display. Colony Director Helen Davis from Terra Nova had tears running down her face. Intelligence Officer Robert Chen looked like he might be sick. "How do we know this is real?" asked General Paul Williams from the Mars Defense Force. He was a skeptical man who had seen too much propaganda in his career. Dr. Robert Chen ran the footage through every test he could think of. "It's real," he said finally. "The weapon signatures match Zephyrian technology. The ship designs are accurate. The biological samples from the pod confirm Katie was on New Haven when this happened." Admiral Thompson called an emergency session of the United Earth Council. Representatives from all 17 human worlds gathered in the council chambers on Earth. The mood was tense as Thompson stood to address them. "Fellow humans," Thompson began, "we face the worst crisis in our species' history. The Zephyrian hegemony has committed genocide against the colony of New Haven. 2,300,000 men, women and children have been murdered without provocation." He played portions of Katie's recordings for the council. Several representatives had to leave the room. Others sat in stunned silence. When the footage ended, the chamber was quiet for a full minute. President Helen Davis of Earth stood up slowly. She was a grandmother who had spent her career working for peace between species. "Why?" she asked. "Why would they do this? We've never fought the Zephyrians. We've never even met them in battle." Dr. Robert Chen had been analyzing intercepted Zephyrian communications for the past week. His report chilled everyone in the room. "According to their own broadcasts, they consider humans to be a plague that must be eliminated," Chen reported. "They call us the infestation and speak of cleansing operations planned for other human worlds." New Haven was not an isolated attack. It was a test run. The implications hit the council like a physical blow. If the Zephyrians wanted to exterminate all humans, then every human world was in danger. Every colony, every ship, every person. Intelligence reports started coming in from across human space. Zephyrian fleets were moving through their territory, gathering ships and supplies. Their propaganda networks were broadcasting calls for the final solution to the human problem. They had given themselves a new name: the Purification Fleet. Captain Nicole Brown commanded the intelligence vessel, Shadowrunner, one of the fastest ships in human space. She had been monitoring Zephyrian communications from the edge of their territory when she intercepted something that made her blood run cold. The Zephyrians were planning their next attack. The target was Prosperity Station, a mining colony with 800,000 people. The attack was scheduled for 6 days from now. Nicole immediately sent her findings to Earth through encrypted channels. The message reached Admiral Thompson while he was still in the council session. "Prosperity Station has 6 days," Thompson announced to the assembled representatives. 800,000 more humans are going to die unless we act." The debate that followed was short and decisive. Some representatives argued for evacuation. Others called for diplomatic protests. But President Davis had seen enough. "The Zephyrians have made their intentions clear," she said, her voice carrying across the silent chamber. "They want to exterminate our entire species. They think we're weak. They think we're prey. They think we'll just sit here and let them murder our families." She paused and looked around the room at the faces of humanity's leaders. They're about to learn that they're wrong, dead wrong. The vote was unanimous. Every human world agreed to the same resolution: total war against the Zephyrian hegemony. And not just defense, not just retaliation, complete and absolute destruction of every Zephyrian military asset in the galaxy. Admiral Thompson stood and delivered the words that would echo through history. The Zephyrians wanted to see monsters. It's time we showed them what real monsters look like. Across human space, the machinery of war began to turn. Shipyards that had been building cargo vessels started producing warships. Factories that made farming equipment switched to making weapons. Scientists who had been studying alien botany began working on new ways to kill. The gentle explorers who had spread peacefully across the stars were gone. In their place, something far more dangerous was waking up, something that remembered why humans had conquered Earth, despite being smaller and weaker than most of the predators they shared it with. Humanity was remembering how to hunt. President Helen Davis stood before the cameras in the United Earth Broadcast Center, knowing that her words would reach every human world in the galaxy. Behind her calm expression was a rage that burned hotter than any star. She had spent her life working for peace, but the Zephyrians had made peace impossible. "My fellow humans," she began, her voice steady but filled with steel. "For 300 years we have tried to be better than our ancestors. We left Earth as explorers and traders, seeking friendship among the stars. We built colonies based on cooperation and understanding. We believed that intelligence and kindness could overcome the darkness that once consumed our homeworld." She paused, letting her words sink in across 17 human worlds where billions of people were watching. "The Zephyrian hegemony has shown us the price of that belief. They have murdered 2,300,000 innocent people simply because we exist. They plan to murder 800,000 more at Prosperity Station. Their goal is the complete extinction of the human race." Helen's voice grew harder with each word. "They have awakened something in humanity that we hoped was buried forever. They will learn why our ancestors conquered Earth, despite facing creatures larger, stronger, and more dangerous than themselves. They will discover why humans survived ice ages, plague, and every disaster our planet could create. They wanted to see monsters. We are about to show them what real monsters look like." Admiral Chris Thompson watched the broadcast from his command center at Luna Base, the massive military complex hidden on the dark side of Earth's moon. Around him, the largest war room in human history buzzed with activity as officers coordinated the mobilization of 17 worlds. Thompson was a thin man with gray hair who had spent 40 years in the human military. He had fought pirates and border disputes, but never anything like this. The scale of what they were planning would have been impossible just weeks ago. Now it seemed like the only sane response to insanity. "Status report," Thompson called to his staff. "All 17 worlds have confirmed total mobilization," reported Colonel Sarah Mitchell. "Industrial capacity is shifting to war production. Shipyards are working around the clock. We're pulling every reserve vessel out of storage." "How long until we can deploy a strike force?" Thompson asked. 72 hours for the first wave. Colonel Taylor's stealth ships are already moving toward Prosperity Station. Colonel Ben Taylor commanded the most dangerous ships in the human fleet. The stealth destroyers had been built in secret during the last border war, using technology that most humans didn't know existed. They could slip through enemy space like ghosts, striking without warning. Ben was a quiet man who preferred action to words. His ships were crewed by volunteers who had seen the footage from New Haven. Every person on his mission knew they might not come home, but they also knew that 800,000 civilians were counting on them. The stealth ships moved through space like shadows, using experimental drive systems that left no energy signature. They reached Prosperity Station 2 days before the Zephyrian fleet was due to arrive. Ben immediately contacted the colony leadership. "This is Colonel Taylor of Earth Defense Command," he transmitted on secure channels. "We're here to prepare a surprise for your uninvited guests." Meanwhile, Dr. Sarah Mitchell was working in the deepest laboratories beneath Luna Base, developing weapons that had been banned by human law for over 2 centuries. The Geneva Conventions had outlawed antimatter torpedoes, quantum disruption fields, and self-replicating nanobots after the Unity Wars proved how devastating they could be. Sarah was a brilliant scientist who had spent her career studying peaceful applications of advanced physics. Now she was learning to weaponize everything she had discovered. The moral weight of what she was creating kept her awake at night, but the images from New Haven burned away her doubts. "The antimatter warheads are ready," she reported to Admiral Thompson. "Each torpedo carries enough destructive power to crack a moon. The quantum disruptors will tear apart any ship's molecular structure. The nanobots will disable enemy systems from the inside." Thompson nodded grimly. "How many can we produce?" "As many as you need," Sarah replied. "Every major industrial world is now making these weapons. We'll have enough firepower to level entire star systems." On the Zephyrian homeworld of Zephyr Prime, War Commander Thex Null was growing concerned about reports from his intelligence officers. Human ship movements had become impossible to predict. Their communication traffic had gone completely silent. Most disturbing, several Zephyrian outposts near human space had simply stopped responding. Something has changed about the humans, reported his intelligence chief, Moxvell. Their ships are moving in patterns we've never seen before. Their weapon signatures are completely unknown. Daxnol dismissed the concerns with a wave of his forearms. They are prey animals trying to look dangerous. Send the purification fleet to Prosperity Station as planned. When we finish there, we'll move on to their industrial worlds. But the Zephyrians were already facing something they didn't understand. Captain Danny Rodriguez was leading covert operations deep in Zephyrian space, using captured alien vessels to blend in with enemy traffic. Danny was a former Special Forces operative who spoke 6 alien languages and could pilot anything with engines. His teams were systematically destroying Zephyrian infrastructure. Communication relays failed without explanation. Supply depots exploded from mysterious malfunctions. Military commanders disappeared during routine inspections. The Zephyrians blamed technical failures and accidents, not realizing they were under attack. The psychological warfare began with simple messages broadcast on Zephyrian frequencies. Human voices reading the names of children killed at New Haven. Recordings of families saying goodbye as the bombs fell, always ending with the same words. You did this. We remember. We are coming. Zephyrian soldiers started reporting nightmares. Their communication networks carried stories of ghost ships and phantom attackers. Morale began to crack as the reality of human retaliation became clear. When the Zephyrian purification fleet finally reached Prosperity Station, they found what appeared to be a defenseless mining colony. The civilian population had been evacuated to underground shelters, but the surface installations looked normal. War Commander Vextal, leading the attack force, felt confident as his 12 ships moved into bombardment position. Begin the cleansing, Vextal ordered his fleet. That was when space around them erupted with hidden human warships. Colonel Taylor's stealth destroyers dropped their cloaking fields simultaneously, appearing like demons from the void. Behind them came Admiral Lisa Webb's main battle fleet, emerging from the shadow of Prosperity Station's largest moon. The UHS Retribution was Admiral Webb's flagship, a massive dreadnought built with the new weapons Dr. Mitchell had developed. Webb was a veteran commander who had lost friends at New Haven. She opened communications with the Zephyrian fleet before firing a single shot. Attention Zephyrian vessels, Webb transmitted. You came here to murder children and families just like you did at New Haven. Instead, you're going to learn why humans are the apex predators of Earth. You wanted to see monsters. Look around you. The trap closed with mechanical precision. The Zephyrian ships found themselves surrounded by human vessels that outgunned them 10-1. Their weapon systems were already being disabled by invisible nanobots that had infiltrated their ships during the approach. Vextal tried to send a distress signal, but his communications were jammed. He tried to retreat, but his engines wouldn't respond. He tried to fight, but his weapons were offline. This is impossible, he transmitted to the human fleet. You are prey. We are the hunters. This cannot be happening. Admiral Webb's response was broadcast across the galaxy on every frequency the human ships could access. You made a fatal mistake. You thought humans were prey because we chose to be peaceful. You forgot that choice is what separates predators from monsters. We chose peace for 3 centuries. Now we choose war, and we're very, very good at war. The Battle of Prosperity Station lasted 14 hours and ended with the complete annihilation of the Zephyrian purification fleet. Not a single alien ship escaped. The galaxy watched in shocked silence as humanity demonstrated that the gentle explorers were gone forever. Something much more dangerous had taken their place. The news of what happened at Prosperity Station spread across the galaxy faster than light could travel. Admiral Lisa Webb's after-action report was classified at the highest levels, but rumors leaked from every ship that had witnessed the battle. The Zephyrian purification fleet had been completely destroyed in 14 hours. Not one alien ship had escaped. Not one human vessel had been lost. Ambassador Quexveral of the Altarian Republic arrived at Earth 3 days after the battle, his bird-like features showing deep concern. The Altarians had been humanity's first alien friends, trading partners for over a century. They had watched humans spread peacefully across the galaxy, building colonies and making friends with dozens of species. President Helen Davis received the ambassador in her office, but she was not the same woman he had known for 20 years. Her eyes held a coldness that made Quexvral's feathers bristle with instinctive fear. President Davis, the ambassador said in his careful English, My government is concerned about recent human military actions. The weapons you used at Prosperity Station violated 17 galactic treaties on warfare. Helen's response was calm, but final. The Zephyrians violated the most basic treaty of all when they decided to exterminate our species. They chose to ignore every law of civilized behavior. We are simply responding in kind. But the quantum disruptors, the nanobots, the antimatter weapons, Quexferal pressed. These technologies could destroy entire star systems. Other species are becoming afraid of what humanity might do. Helen stood and walked to her window, looking out at the ships being built in Earth's orbital yards. Thousands of vessels under construction, all designed for war. Let them be afraid, she said without turning around. The Zephyrians thought we were weak because we chose peace. Other species might make the same mistake. Fear will keep them from repeating the Zephyrians' error. General Mark Williams was leading the second wave of human retaliation, a massive assault force targeting every Zephyrian military installation in their territory. Mark was a methodical man who approached war like a science. His ships moved through Zephyrian space like a plague, destroying everything with military value while leaving civilian targets untouched. The attacks were surgically precise, but absolutely ruthless. Zephyrian naval bases were reduced to atomic particles. Military academies were vaporized. Weapons factories were turned into molten craters. But hospitals, schools, and civilian housing were left completely unharmed. The message was clear. Humans would not target innocents, but anyone who wore a Zephyrian military uniform was marked for death. Dr. Jennifer Clark had developed the psychological warfare protocols that were breaking Zephyrian morale across their empire. Jennifer was a former therapist who understood how the mind worked under stress. She had created a campaign designed to drive enemy soldiers to despair. Human ships broadcast the voices of New Haven's children over Zephyrian military frequencies. Recordings of families singing lullabies, children laughing at play, mothers telling bedtime stories. Always followed by the same message. These were the voices you silenced. Now silence yourselves. The psychological attacks worked better than anyone had expected. Zephyrian soldiers began surrendering without fighting. Others refused orders to engage human forces. Some units simply abandoned their posts and went home. The warrior culture that had conquered dozens of worlds was collapsing, under the weight of guilt and terror. War Commander Thax Knoll sent increasingly desperate messages to his government from his command ship in the core systems. The reports he received from the front lines made no sense to him. How could prey animals be defeating his warrior race so completely? They move like ghosts through our space, he reported to the High Command. Our sensors cannot track their stealth ships. Our weapons cannot penetrate their shields. Our soldiers will not fight them. The High Command's response was to send more ships, but those ships never reached their destinations. Human forces intercepted them in deep space, destroying them so completely that not even debris remained. The quantum disruptors left nothing behind but empty space where Zephyrian fleets had been. Captain Karen Wright led the deep strike mission that penetrated to the heart of Zephyrian territory. Her task force consisted of the newest human warships, vessels so advanced they seemed like magic compared to anything the galaxy had seen before. Karen was a former test pilot who loved pushing technology to its limits. Her ships moved through the most heavily defended systems in Zephyrian space like they owned them. Enemy fortifications that had protected the core worlds for centuries were swept aside like toys. The message was clear. Nowhere in Zephyrian space was safe from human retribution. The Confederation of Peaceful Worlds sent urgent diplomatic missions to Earth, pleading for restraint. Representatives from a dozen species arrived to meet with President Davis, all concerned about what humanity was becoming. You must stop this campaign, urged Chancellor Mex Nora of the Vegan Union. Yes, the Zephyrians committed atrocities, but total war is not the answer. There must be room for mercy, for forgiveness. President Davis listened politely to their concerns, then played them footage from New Haven. The alien diplomats watched in horror as Zephyrian soldiers shot children who were trying to surrender. They saw hospitals burned with patients still inside. They witnessed the systematic murder of an entire civilization. When the footage ended, Davis's response became legendary throughout the galaxy. They chose genocide, she said, her voice carrying the weight of absolute conviction. They chose to target our children, our families, our future. They declared that humanity has no right to exist. We are simply agreeing with their assessment about the right to exist. The only difference is we're applying it to them. The alien diplomats left Earth in silence, carrying news that would reshape galactic politics forever. Humanity was no longer interested in being part of the galactic community. They had become something else entirely. Intelligence reports confirmed what everyone feared. The New Haven attack had been planned at the highest levels of Zephyrian society. Intercepted communication showed government officials discussing the human problem and debating the most efficient ways to commit genocide. There had been no rogue commanders, no unauthorized attacks. The entire Zephyrian leadership had voted for human extinction. The evidence eliminated any possibility of negotiation or mercy. This was not a war that could be ended with treaties or compensation. One species had decided the other should not exist. Only one would survive. Zephyrian attempts at seeking mediation through neutral species were met with cold silence from human representatives. Admiral Thompson's response to their peace overtures was broadcast across the galaxy. Peace is what we offered them for 3 centuries. They answered with genocide. Now they want to negotiate? Now they want mercy? Where was their mercy when our children begged for their lives? The siege of Zephyr Prime began with a human fleet so massive it blocked out stars. Ships arrived from every human world, volunteers from every colony, veterans of every service. The combined might of 17 worlds gathered around the Zephyrian homeworld like a closing fist. Admiral Thompson coordinated the operation from the UHS Inevitable, a dreadnought that had been built in the 45 days since New Haven's fall. The ship's name reflected humanity's new doctrine. Some things could not be forgiven, only answered. The final phase of the war was about to begin, and everyone in the galaxy knew how it would end. The species that had chosen to exterminate humanity was about to discover what extinction really meant. The siege of Zephyr Prime began with silence. Admiral Thompson's massive fleet surrounded the Zephyrian homeworld like a wall of death, blocking out the light of distant stars. Ships from every human colony floated in perfect formation, their weapons trained on the planet where the genocide of New Haven had been planned and celebrated. War Commander Thex Newell sat in his command bunker, deep beneath the surface of Zephyr Prime, staring at sensor readings that made no sense. The human fleet contained more ships than his entire race had built in their 1,000-year history. Each vessel carried enough firepower to crack continents. Together they could turn his world into cosmic dust. How many ships? He asked his sensor operator, though he already knew the answer would be impossible. Over 1 million vessels, Commander, came the terrified reply. The computer cannot calculate their total firepower. The number exceeds our measuring systems. Thex Newell felt something he had never experienced before. Absolute terror. His race had conquered 47 worlds, but they had never faced anything like this. The humans had turned their entire civilization into a weapon aimed at Zephyrian extinction. Admiral Thompson stood on the bridge of the UHS Inevitable, watching the blue-green world that had spawned the monsters who murdered children for sport. He was a grandfather who had spent his life protecting the innocent. Now he was about to commit an act that would reshape the galaxy forever. His communication officer looked up from her station. "Sir, we're receiving a transmission from the planet. War Commander Thex Newell wants to negotiate." Thompson checked his chronometer. 43 minutes had passed since the fleet arrived. He had waited exactly 1 minute for every 1,000 humans killed at New Haven. "Put him through," Thompson ordered. Thex Newell's image appeared on the main screen, his insectoid features showing desperation behind the alien arrogance. "Admiral Thompson, I am authorized to offer territorial concessions, war reparations, and the execution of those responsible for the New Haven incident. Surely we can reach an agreement that avoids further bloodshed." Thompson stared at the alien commander for long seconds before responding. When he spoke, his words were broadcast simultaneously to every species in the galaxy. "War Commander, your government made a decision 54 days ago. You decided that humanity should not exist. You decided our children should die. You decided our families should burn. Today humanity returns that decision. This is not war. This is extinction protocol. You are no longer permitted to exist." The transmission ended and Thompson turned to his weapons officer. "Begin the final cleansing." The assault on Zephyr Prime was not a battle but an execution. Human forces had learned everything about Zephyrian military doctrine, studied every defensive system, mapped every bunker and installation. The attack was surgical, systematic, and absolutely merciless. Captain Rachel Murphy led the ground assault teams that hunted down the Zephyrian leadership. Rachel was a veteran of the colonial wars who had volunteered for this mission after seeing footage of New Haven's children being murdered. Her teams moved through the underground bunkers like angels of death, seeking the creatures who had planned genocide. "Remember," Rachel told her soldiers as they prepared to breach the final command bunker, "these things watched recordings of our children dying and laughed. They celebrated the murder of babies. Show them the same mercy they showed our families." The Zephyrian High Command had retreated to their deepest shelter, a fortress built to survive planetary bombardment. But human technology had advanced far beyond anything the aliens could imagine. Rachel's teams used quantum phase weapons that allowed them to walk through solid walls as if they were air. The alien leaders cowered in their final refuge, begging for mercy as human soldiers surrounded them. Thex Null fell to his knees, his forearms raised in surrender. "Please," he whispered. "We were wrong." "We were so wrong. Your species is not prey. You are the ultimate predator. We surrender completely. Show us mercy." Rachel looked down at the creature who had planned the deaths of millions of innocents. Her voice was calm and final. "Did our children beg? Did our families beg when you hunted them through the streets? You chose to be monsters. Monsters don't get mercy." The last transmission from Zephyr Prime was recorded by human forces as they systematically eliminated every trace of Zephyrian military and government presence. The message was broadcast across the galaxy as a warning to any species that might consider following the Zephyrian example. "We have awakened something that will consume us all." "The final Zephyrian," broadcaster said before the transmission cut to static. "They are not prey. They are not peaceful. They are the thing that hunts nightmares. We have doomed ourselves and possibly the entire galaxy." Dr. Paul Anderson oversaw the deployment of the Genesis Protocol, humanity's final gift to the Zephyrian worlds. The terraforming virus would gradually transform every planet in Zephyrian space into environments suitable for human life. It was a process that would take decades, but the symbolism was clear. The worlds that had planned human extinction would become humanity's newest colonies. Within 72 hours of the siege beginning, the Zephyrian hegemony ceased to exist. Every military installation was destroyed. Every government official was dead. Every warship was scrap metal floating in space. The species that had decided humanity should not exist had been systematically erased from the galaxy. President Helen Davis addressed the human worlds for the final time as a wartime leader. Her broadcast reached every human colony, every ship, every outpost in human space. "The Zephyrian hegemony has learned what our ancestors knew," she said, standing before the flags of 17 worlds. "Humans are not prey. We are the apex predator of Earth, the species that survived every disaster our world could create. We conquered a planet full of creatures larger and stronger than ourselves, because we are the thing that hunts hunters." She paused, letting her words echo across human space. "For 3 centuries, we tried to be better than our nature. We spread across the stars as explorers and traders seeking friendship and peace. The Zephyrians reminded us why that was a luxury we could not afford. They have paid the price for that lesson, and the galaxy has learned from their mistake." The war's end left humanity fundamentally changed. The gentle colonists and peaceful traders were gone forever. In their place stood something that made the galaxy's other species check their borders and reconsider their assumptions about the small bipeds from the third planet of an unremarkable star. Ambassador Quexfral stood before the Galactic Council 5 years later, delivering his final report on human activities. His voice shook as he read the statistics of human expansion since the Zephyrian War. In the past 5 years, humanity has established colonies on 47 former Zephyrian worlds, he reported to the assembled representatives. Their military expansion continues unchecked. Their technology advances at rates that our scientists call impossible. Most concerning, they no longer seek membership in galactic organizations. They no longer ask permission for anything. The council chamber was silent as the implications sank in. Humanity had become the galaxy's ultimate deterrent. The species that other civilizations pointed to when explaining why genocide was not merely immoral but evolutionary suicide. Admiral Thompson's final appearance before the Galactic Council became the stuff of legend. When questioned about human military expansion and the concerns of other species, His response redefined galactic politics forever. "For 3 centuries, we tried to be your friends," Thompson said. His words carried to every species in the galaxy. "We traded fairly, fought your wars alongside you, and asked only to be left in peace. Then someone decided our children should die," stood and looked around the chamber at representatives from hundreds of worlds. "We've remembered why our ancestors were the only species on Earth that looked at apex predators and thought dinner. Any species that threatens humanity's future will discover why humans conquered a planet full of monsters. The Zephyrians wanted to see what we really were. Now everyone knows. Remember this lesson well. The galaxy had learned a truth that would echo through the ages. There are some species you can fight, some you can negotiate with, and some you simply do not provoke." Humanity had become the third kind, and the phrase "Remember New Haven" entered galactic consciousness as both warning and promise. The gentle explorers were gone forever, replaced by something far more dangerous. Apex predators who remembered exactly what they were capable of when their families were threatened.